My name is Millie Fontana. I'm 23 years old and I am a donor-conceived child of lesbian parents. And I was raised atheist and have no religious affiliations. That growing up with two mothers forced me to be confused about who I was. And I personally believe that a child deserves a right to their biological mother and father wherever possible, regardless of what your family circumstance is. And that's the direction of our family law court as it is. So same-sex marriage being brought in, marriage being so closely intertwined with child reproduction, we really need to look at these issues before it comes into play.
What we don't want is a system or a family structure that permits intentional fatherless and motherlessness.
They wrote, "While we love and cherish our mothers, we feel it's imperative we bring to the court's attention the impact that redefining marriage will have on children like us."
The daughter of lesbian mothers has become a leading opponent of gay marriage. How does that work?
Well, simply because I recognize that while my mother was a fantastic mother, and most of what I do well as a mother myself, I do because that's how she parented me, she can't be a father.
Like us, we oppose gay marriage on the grounds it violates children's rights and cannot provide children with the most foundational building blocks for child development: a mother and a father living with them and loving them.
But what's your concern with changing the Marriage Act? Do you think it would normalise same-sex marriage and therefore more children will be born into a situation that you have? Is that your concern?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. My mother actually put this to me in a hypothetical sense. She asked me if, her and her partner were able to be married back when I was a child, if that would have helped me to normalise myself in society. And it's absolutely not the issue. The issue at hand was always that I was fatherless and I had issues with fatherlessness. So for me, it's really important that we acknowledge children in that circumstance and go, okay, maybe a child does deserve a right to a mother and a father, to know their genetic background, family history, heritage. All of these things are really actually quite important to children, and we need to take a look at it from a different perspective.
So in this
I sat there one afternoon crying my eyes out, flicking through every single family photo album in the house because I was so desperately looking for a face that might be similar, that could be him. How can you take either a mother or a father from a child and expect it to have no consequence whatsoever? That's the bit that I don't get. And I think to myself, wow, the amount of people that try to belittle that as a concept and act as though children really don't give a single shit about who they are and who their parents are. I just think it's an absolute joke. How can anybody turn around and devalue identity?
We support, and as a society, the right of same-sex couples to be parents. And we do it because, look, there's lots of pseudoscience and gobbledygook out there about the effects on kids. Almost every study demonstrates that the most important factor is whether a child is raised in a loving household.
That's actually not what the studies say, though.
Your case study demonstrates that. It's not biology that influences whether you've got a happy, healthy, well-balanced child. It's whether they grow up in a loving household. And if
This research is often criticised because these studies don't use random, population-based sampling designs, which are the gold standard of large-scale social science. Instead, they use what's called convenience sampling, where participants are recruited using emails, events, and personal contacts.
And there are so many volunteer studies and whatever else saying that kids are so happy and blah, blah, but there's also a huge dark side to this culture where kids have come out with their issues and everybody's desperately trying to brush it under the rug in the name of equality. It's really dark. Kids are often coached, actually, on what they can and can't say. You'll see this in different texts, like families like mine.
But it doesn't seem that anyone is actually asking the kids what they feel. Like we're proof, right, of our parents', successful relationships. My mums have been together for 27 years, and why is their relationship worth less than anyone else's?
Nobody should be pushing kids to say positive or negative things. I mean, the fact that somebody had a documentary, Gay Bee Baby or whatever it was, I saw some of that and it made me sick.
There's a lot of pressure on children of gay parents to please their parents, to sort of carry the banner forward.
It is hard to come out and say things publicly, but it needs to be said, because who else is saying it?
In that book admitted that it's very difficult to be honest about this because of the political pressure surrounding this topic.
My mother's partner in particular was so fragile.
There's several children that have contacted me, even since I started writing about this, saying, I agree with you, but I'll never come out and speak about this publicly because my relationship with my parent is too tenuous.
She felt so fragile about the entire situation. And I never wanted to hurt her coming forward with any of this. There are people that have started looking for their sperm donors, and they have to keep that a secret for fear of being disowned. When we speak up in these family structures, we face being rejected by pretty much everybody we know and love. And I sat on this information, on these feelings for a very long time. This is not equality for children. This is equality for adults. And the very term marriage equality actually offends me, because nobody is thinking about the consequence on the other side of the coin. What comes out of that union? And what comes out of that union is us.
I think that I'm pretty fair in my statements to say that whether you're heterosexual or homosexual, children have rights. And adults, the onus needs to be on adults to conform to the rights of children, rather than children fitting into an adult's lifestyle.
I did eventually meet my father. The conflict was so hard in the home that they had no other choice but to allow me to meet him, or really just watch me regress further behaviourally and emotionally. So I met him, and I've said this before, I felt like I knew who I was for the first time. And I can't stress that enough. Like, that day for me put a lot of things into perspective, and I felt as though maybe I had a bit of a future ahead of me as soon as that day came around.
Cheryl Cairns asks, did not having a father in your life cause you pain or make you feel like something important was missing? Did you long for a daddy?
I absolutely did. I did. And it had effects. This is, whenever I was a little girl, anytime an airplane flew over, I would wave at it because I thought maybe he was in it. And, if I waved at it, maybe he would see me. And I know that sounds silly, but as a 5- and 6-year-old, those are the things that you think about. You wonder where they are and what's going on, and if they think about you, if they miss you, if they want to be in your life.
Dun 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 dun. Cooper, I am your father.
No, no, no. I am your father.
That's gotta be the worst Vader ever.
Campbell's Star Wars soups.
How about you be Chewbacca?
Made for real life.
Understand is how would the homosexuals getting married affect a heterosexual family?
Well, they don't affect the heterosexual family directly. In that regard, the argument is a false argument. The fact of the matter is that homosexual marriage degrades a weakened, time-honored institution.
Okay.
It degrades what real marriage is. It mocks real marriage. The destructive effects may not be immediately apparent, but the cumulative effect of attacking the time-honored institution of marriage is inescapable.
Exactly what one would want, I fully understand. The question in these matters is not, though, what does compassion demand, but what is the definition of marriage? Every religious and non-religious tradition, every major moral thinker in history, not one of them in any tradition has ever advocated for changing the definition of marriage to same sex. I would like children to be raised to believe that when they grow up, they will get married, and that they are not asked when they are 6 or 7 years old, will you marry a boy or a girl? I think that there is enough sexual confusion in the life of children not to add that. I want gays to have every right. However, redefining marriage is not called for.
The people being
In other words, the state has a distinct obligation to protect itself as a society by enforcing laws which uphold the society itself. And the brick of all civilization is the family. So the state has a distinct obligation to support those laws which support the brick of civilization, which is the family, not to undermine that brick of civilization.
Marriage has been redefined in the past, and it should be redefined again. Well, in the past, this country did not allow people of different races to marry, and now we do. And we look back at the time when it was illegal, and we say, wow, I can't believe that was the case back then.
Dennis, how about changes? Blacks and whites couldn't marry in Alabama, and that was their definition of marriage.
That is absolutely right, and that was never the value of any religious tradition or any non-religious tradition. That was racism. And there's no comparison between the two for one incredibly important reason. There is no difference between people of different races. There are immense differences between people of the two sexes. The notion that sex and race, or gender and race, are parallel is invalid. There is no difference between a black human and a white human. There are enormous differences between a male human and a female human. We allow Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. Is that the same as Black Scouts and White Scouts? Of course not.
But the issue is, I have looked for this, and I can't find a passage in the Bible that says it's between one man and one woman. There are plenty of...
Well, that's because people weren't insane 5,000 years ago. They didn't need the further definition. I mean, no man who was gay 5,000 years ago would have wanted to be married. Why would he want to be married? Tell me what the reason is. Explain it to me.
I want to talk about homophobia. I think it's very interesting that the gay community has turned around and tried to equate homophobia with racism. I think this is a disgustingly inaccurate comparison, as we've just heard from people of the stolen generation and what it really means to be discriminated against based on your colour. And again, it is ironic in itself, because on the other side of the fence, where we support traditional marriage, we have made the comparison and said, well, hang on, maybe depriving a child of their mother or father could be considered similar to a stolen generation, although nowhere near as horrific. Similar.
Have a read of some of the things which are said about us and our families, and then come back here and tell us this is a unifying moment. The Australian Christian lobby described our children as the stolen generation. We love our children, and I object, as do every person who cares about children, and as do all those couples in this country, same-sex couples who have kids, to being told our children are a stolen generation? You talk about unifying moments?
Where's my family? Where's my
we have a stolen generation. We've learnt from the experience of the stolen generation that you should not break the biological identity of a child. And I'm saying that in the same way, same-sex marriage breaks the biological identity of a child.
This luxurious Melbourne home is a fairy tale come true for 3 Aboriginal girls from Melville Island, 180 miles from Darwin. Mr. and Mrs. Deutscher visited the island last year and adopted 3 Aborigines to bring up with their own 3 children. Christine is 4, and for the first time in her life she has a mother and father. 2-year-old Faye was rescued by a territory policeman who found her abandoned. They've been cared for by the Methodist Mission, and now they live in a 15-room mansion. Mr. Deutscher says he believes it's possible to integrate Aboriginals into white families. Christine certainly seems to be proving that Mr. Deutscher is right, and so does Faye. It's all so new to them, and they're still a little wide-eyed. A long way from Melville Island, but at last a home and the love and affection of a family of their own. Sleep tight, children, because you know that dreams do come true, don't you?
4-year-old twins Emmett and Gabriel are pretty typical kids. They like to play outside, they like puzzles and toy cars, and they're curious about new gadgets. They also like to cuddle in their parents' arms, and sometimes they need extra attention. Emmett and Gabriel have pretty old-fashioned parents, who tied the knot before they moved in together, who always knew they wanted to have kids, who try to attend church on Sundays, who share dishwashing and laundry duties, and who put the boys to bed by 8 p.m. every night. Except that their parents, Paul Melkert and James Zimmerman, are gay.
There is a very primitive, beautiful, strong, instinctual bond that comes from a parent, a biological parent, and to withhold that without it being absolutely necessary just seems ridiculous to me.
Third date, both of us realized that this was something that was turning into something that was going to last for a long time, and I was nervous going into this that I very much wanted to become a parent, and was hopeful that James did too.
Like many parents, watching their children being born was one of the most powerful moments of their lives. In Paul and James' case, a surrogate mom delivered the twins, but needed an emergency C-section.
I get so emotional when I talk about this because I think, in particular in cases with mother and baby, that bond you have with your birth mother, I do not understand how anybody could want to basically rip a child from their mother and throw it into a completely different structure when it's not necessary.
Paul and James were both in the room during the birth.
To hear your son cry for the first time as he came out and they placed him in a warmer, and then number 2 we heard cry. Emmett, the older brother on the left, comforting his crying brother on the right. Yeah, it was really an incredible moment.
By putting it in contrast with kids that are adopted and whatever else, as though it's okay to actually take these primitive bonds from children, just seems toxic to me. I mean, you should never really willfully want to do that to a child. It's always whatever's next best in line is what we should do. It's always a last resort to me, I think, to do that. And pressure from any other country should not be a valid excuse to change our already quite progressive equality laws. Gay people in this country are fortunate. We have equality. But do we need to also give them marriage? The answer, in my opinion, is no. And until there is any suggestion of legislation that perhaps suggests that children have rights, I don't think we should consider it. I think it is an offence to children if we consider this as it is now. Thank you for your time.